Oh my goodness. Week 3 was absolutely incredible, and we are here to give you the top 10 takeaways from an absolutely loaded, absolutely electric, absolutely phenomenal week 3 of the NFL season. Welcome in to today's episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. Lucas Wenzel, Cameron Lawrence, Tyler Plath, all back with you on today's episode. Fellas, outside of the 3 words I used for week 3, how would you describe it?
Devastating. That's the word I'll use. Devastating.
Incredible.
I was going to. Devastating is not the right word, Cameron. I don't care who you played in your matchups. Week 3 was freaking awesome. And
well, I'm a Vikings fan. It was devastating.
We don't talk about the Minnesota Vikings on this podcast because they don't deserve our attention outside of game day for us to be disappointed.
Hold on. I just have to say real quick. We hyped the heck out of Jordan Addison this past week as a start. And no, we don't talk about the Vikings on this podcast. Yeah, we do. Just certain ones.
Game-winning touchdown. Hit him right in the breadbasket, and he bobbled it. Granted, it was tipped. I'll give him a break on that.
Just go trade TJ Hawkinson at this point, just because.
Get rid of all your Vikings. Turn to the Jets. We're going to break down. There was a lot more that happened in week 3 outside of the Vikings. Brandon Staley just making one of the worst play calls I've ever seen in my entire life on 4th and 1 with the game on the line in your own territory.
He said he'd do it again.
And then the Vikings not capitalizing on it. We have a ton to break down. This is going to be a action-loaded, jam-packed episode. I don't want to waste anybody's time. Let's dive on into talking week 3. All right. Here's the thing. Normally we go round robin, and Cameron, typically you're the one who starts. Can I start this week?
Fine.
We absolutely 100% need to talk about it. I don't want to be that guy, but I think we kind of need to start with the 2 running backs who were the overall running back 1 and 2 this week and put up a combined total of 94 fantasy points, and they were on the same team. We have never seen that. Devon Achane, 51.3 fantasy points on the week. Raheem Mostert, 45.2 fantasy points. I didn't even give him enough points. They scored 96.5 points combined. Okay. Let's dissect this first, because I could give you all the stats. I could give you all the crazy highlights. I could give you all that, but let's get applicable right away here. Is this more about the Dolphins or the Broncos? Is this about the Mike McDaniel offense or the Denver Broncos run defense? Because I won't answer. I want to hear both of your thoughts first.
At this point, if you're putting up 70 points, it's got to be about both. I think it's the culmination of everything we've seen from Mike McDaniel, right? And it's just all kind of came together perfectly. And then it's the fact that the Broncos are just a train wreck, and they are just a disgusting team, and both hit, and it was just a perfect storm.
Can we say that Miami through the first 2 weeks of the season kind of set up this game by being fairly pass heavy in the first 2 weeks? Mm-hmm. And then Denver comes in expecting a pass heavy game, and not Miami. They're going to run the ball this week, and running for over 300 yards. I don't think that just happens on a that it just doesn't happen out of the blue. That is a game script. That's a game plan. That is all this thing. So like you said, I think it's a mix of both, but I feel like it's more Miami saying we can just do whatever we want, whenever we want.
So the reason I ask that question is because, yes, I do think all the credit in the world to creative play calling from Mike McDaniel. We have to factor a lot of Mike McDaniel into this, but we just saw Brian Robinson tear apart this Broncos run defense too. Vance Joseph has looked pretty bad as a defensive coordinator this year after having a stellar defense over the past 2 years. So that's why I bring that up of is this more about Denver's defense? Do we just have to start all running backs that play against Denver's defense? Are they the new Detroit Lions this year where we're oh, they got better this year, and now all of a sudden they're getting shredded on the ground? I think it is about both. I think you nailed it right on the head, Cameron. But at the same time, I'm going forward, if teams can run rampant, teams aren't going to, score 96.5 fantasy points with their running backs. Probably, again, in my lifetime. Let's be honest. We're not going to see that kind of a performance again. But man, Denver's defense as a whole just looks lost, looks confused, looks extremely disappointing right now. That being said, how are we supposed to handle the Miami backfield going forward? Because you have Raheem Mostert, a 31-year-old running back who is handling more touches than we have ever seen him handle in his NFL career. We have Devon Achane then, who, oh my gosh, what a way to show out in your real first game of NFL action. I know he played week 2 against the Patriots, but only had 1 carry for 5 yards in that game. So how do we navigate this Miami backfield going forward? Is it purely Raheem Mostert? Is Devon Achane starting to show up? What can we expect out of this backfield going forward? How do we navigate it for our fantasy lineups?
Yeah, I think it's going to be more of a split. I don't think we're going to see what we saw the first 2 weeks. And I think a big part of that was Achane coming off the injury, right? He was injured week 1. I think he was still nursing the shoulder a little week 2. And this week we actually saw him out carry Raheem Mostert. He played 41% of the snaps. He was out carrying him before it truly got it got out of hand really quick, but it was pretty close to 50-50 as far as carries go early in this game. And I think that's what we're going to see more moving forward. The scary part is they're both not going to score 4 touchdowns each week. And it could be one of these games of one of them is going to be fantastic, but are you picking the right one on that certain week? That is what I'm scared about. But I do think they could both have fantasy value moving forward.
They absolutely have value. My thing is McDaniel would be stupid to not have Achane involved in the game plan moving forward, right? Even with Jeff, right? Exactly. With Jeff Wilson coming back too, you then have 3 running backs, and we've seen Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson split the backfield, and based on last year, it was very much Mostert 1 week, Jeff Wilson another week, and it went back and forth between the two. Now we had Devon Achane into the mix. I kind of want to say it's kind of going to be shared a little bit between the 3. It's going to be Achane 1 week, then it's Mostert, because the defense just has to prepare for 1 guy, 2 guys. Miami has their pick of whoever can run rampant in whatever game. So each back still is going to have value. You're just going to have to probably take it week by week and just see okay, is someone going to be between the tackles between the 3 of them? Is someone the outside guy? Is someone more of the pass catcher? You're going to have to split hairs, and that's annoying.
It's incredibly annoying. But at the same time, all of a sudden, you now have 2 running backs who all of a sudden can give you top 20 upside on a given week. And Raheem Mostert honestly probably gives you top 10 upside every week. Well, I know Devon Achane outscored him this week, but again, I don't think we're expecting Devon Achane to outcarry Raheem Mostert to be more productive than Raheem Mostert. But oh my goodness, those 2 absolutely put on a show on Sunday. That has got to be the number 1 biggest takeaway from this week is holy smokes. Those 2 running backs, I have no words for it. I have no words for it. Cameron, I'll kick it over to you now. We spent quite a bit of time talking about those Miami running backs there, but I figured that's a lot of what people are expecting here. Most managers are probably wondering, great, I have a stud RB1. You probably do, but what about those who have Devon Achane? What about those who are going to pick Devon Achane up off the waiver wire? What can I expect from that? But at any rate, I'll kick it over to you, Cameron, because you want to talk about a running back who, for your first biggest takeaway of the week, who was quite literally the polar opposite of both Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane, which is actually very concerning.
Yeah, I'm actually going to switch it up and you and talk about probably even a bigger takeaway than the Miami Dolphins. That was that Taylor Swift was at Arrowhead.
Yeah.
That was what the people wanted to hear about. I want to know what the amount of time she was on the TV was, because it was more than probably needed. But you're right.
Can we take a quick vote? Scale of 1 to 10. How approving are we of this Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce fling? Do we think this is actually a good thing?
It's got to be a marketing scheme by the Kelceys. Their podcast is going to be huge after this.
It might be by Taylor, too. Let's be honest.
She's going to take over the NFL, and they're going to take over podcasting. It's going to be absolutely nuts. She's going to be performing at the 2025 halftime show. I give it a 7. I think it's a good move by both career-wise.
Oh, this one's a layup. It's a 22.
Oh.
You're the worst.
That was gross.
That was
Speaking
gross.
of 22, is that Derrick Henry's number?
It is.
It is.
It is.
All right, good. I
Look at
said it.
that.
I said it
Oh.
confidently, and then I was like, I think I just missed, but I was okay. Good.
Show moment of the year
Um,
right there. What a segue.
I should have just went with it.
Unintentional.
I should have just went with it. But yeah, Derrick Henry, he is leading this backfield in touches. Right, he had 11. He had 11 carries to Tyjae. Is it Tyjae Spears?
Tajay.
Tyjae. Okay. I was making my TikTok video and I didn't want to put his name in because I couldn't figure out how to say it correctly, and I did not want to be the guy that mispronounced it. So I just
Paul Allen, the voice of the Vikings during the preseason, kept on calling him Tajay, and I was like,
Tajay.
that's not how you say it.
It is Tajay.
But anyways, Spears outsnapped him 33-17 in this one. So Derrick Henry is still getting the carries, but he's not going to have the receiving work in the same way, and he's definitely going to be game script dependent moving forward. And I think that is what scares me about him, because let's be honest, he's not on a good offense. This Titans offense is not going to get out to leads. They're not just going to be able to feed Henry. And I think he can still be a top, I think he can still be a RB1 kind of guy just because he is so big. And when they are in games where they can run, they're still going to run the ball. They've already shown that earlier in this year. But he is on a very slippery slope right now. He's at 3.2 yards per carry. If it begins to get worse, they're going to start putting Spears in more and more and start making this a true committee, which could get scary. So we need him to kind of really start to bounce back, because right now it is just one ugly run up the middle after another for Henry.
I wonder if it really comes down to like the offensive line matching up against the opposing defensive line. Like the two games where Derrick Henry has not done a whole lot with his touches has been New Orleans and Cleveland, in games where they've both lost. New Orleans and Cleveland probably have better defensive linemen to go up against Tennessee's offensive linemen.
Mm-hmm.
And the one win that the Titans have was against the Chargers. And we all know that teams can run on the Chargers. I mean, Minnesota's run game is not very good. They still ran the ball decently well. I know they got stuffed a couple of times, but like Madison had 90 rushing yards, something like that.
93.
Like
93 on 20 attempts.
Like teams can run on the Chargers, so it makes sense for Henry to get the ball then. So it might be as simple as that, but the point of Tyjae Spears is going to get on the field some way, somehow. It's detrimental to Derrick Henry's value.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do as a fantasy manager then? Let's make this applicable. What do you do? Because this is a big name. This isn't just like a small, like, oh, look at how good this player was this week takeaway. This is like, you drafted Derrick Henry in the early second round. If you were really ballsy, not even ballsy, if you really wanted to, you drafted him late first. What in the world do you even do with Derrick Henry at this point? Because you're selling him for 25 cents on the dollar right now. But it's getting really tough to play him every single week.
Yeah, I think it depends what kind of league you're in. If you're in a more casual league where people are just looking at fantasy scores, they're just looking at, hey, Derrick Henry's still leading this team in carries, then I think you can sell him right now. I would lean towards selling him anyways, and just hoping name value alone, you get someone who, I think most leagues are going to have at least one person who believes, okay, Derrick Henry can bounce back. And maybe that one person is you. That's why you drafted him. But, moving forward, maybe you try and wait it out for, seeing if he can get a 25-point week, because we know he's going to still be capable of that. But yeah, I would be, especially in these next few weeks, be really looking to sell Derrick Henry.
Can I do a quick name game for you guys?
Oh, I was going to play a name game. Yeah.
Fine, you can. You're the host.
No.
Okay.
No, play a name game with us. I'm ready.
Derrick Henry or Josh Jacobs?
Josh Jacobs. No question. I was going to ask that one.
Derrick Henry or Jahmyr Gibbs?
Jahmyr Gibbs. Oh,
I think I'm going to go Gibbs. I'm going to take the upside.
PPR upside for sure. Derrick Henry, DeAndre Swift.
I'm going to stick Derrick Henry because I haven't seen Swift yet.
Going to take Henry as well.
But that could change after Monday Night Football. Again, this is coming out Tuesday. So if Swift is very clearly the lead back tonight, my opinion might change on that. But in this very moment at 5:02 p.m. Central Time on Monday, September 25th, I am going to say Derrick Henry over DeAndre Swift.
Last one, Derrick Henry or Aaron Jones?
Aaron Jones.
Yeah, I'll take Aaron Jones too. Can I throw two more in there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Jerome Ford, Derrick Henry.
That's so disgusting. I'm going to take Derrick Henry.
But Jerome Ford, 19 fantasy points this week on 13 touches.
I'm still, yeah.
How many yards
Jerome
did
Ford.
how many yards did Ford have?
I believe
It was 18
he had
rushing
10,
yards.
he had 18 rushing yards. and
So okay, we're looking at both 2 touchdown dependent players. I'm going to take the guy who's been better historically, and who's not having Kareem Hunt, who they just signed, come in. That's my reason. I do think it's going to be very close at the end of the year. I think it's going to be ugly for both. I think they're both going to be where you're going to have games where it's like what Henry just had. But if I'm going to take between the two, I'm going to lean Henry.
I say Jerome Ford just because Jerome Ford can get on a field no matter the situation because he can catch out of the backfield. So there's some PPR upside with him versus Derrick Henry, where if Tennessee is down, Derrick Henry's off the field.
Derrick Henry or Zach Moss. Last one. Let's get real gross. Derrick Henry or Zach Moss.
I gotta go Derrick Henry. I just, especially with the fact that I think Jonathan Taylor wants to play, and that he could be back week 5 and Zach Moss is close to irrelevant. I think I'm gonna go Derrick Henry.
Yeah, same here. I'll go Derrick Henry on that one.
It's stupid because I'm taking Derrick Henry based on name merit alone. Zach Moss. I'm going to save Zach Moss. I'm going to talk about him in a little bit. I have a lot to say about Zach Moss. I'm still going to take Derrick Henry there. Ty, I'll kick it over to you. I'm actually going to shift up your takeaways a little bit because let's just keep it about running backs this first part of the episode. There was a running back who surprisingly performed really well this upcoming week, despite what quite literally everything was going to tell us so far this year.
James Conner might just be matchup proof, which is a crazy concept.
He's him.
He
is him.
We were telling you that he's one of the better values, but back to what I'm back. James Conner just put up 7 yards per carry against the Dallas Cowboys, and he found the end zone. I'm sorry, but Breece Hall couldn't do that, and Saquon Barkley couldn't do that. Now that might just be a schematic thing for Arizona, but I think the thing is that James Conner, who is 3rd in carries, 3rd in yards so far this year, it doesn't matter who he's going up against because I think we saw a little bit of Keontae Ingram.
He was mixed in.
But the fact that James Conner gets volume no matter who they're playing, and if he can be that efficient, he's not going to be that efficient every week. But you look ahead, he's got San Francisco, Cincinnati, and the Rams. I don't care. This past week against Dallas proved to me you still play James Conner. And we'll see if that changes ever based on snap counts. I mean, Keontae Ingram was a surprise play, or was surprisingly included in the game plan and stuff. But for foreseeable future, James Conner is locked into your lineup as your running back 2 because he gets volume and he does well with it.
I don't know who to credit for this. I don't know if it's a Jonathan Gannon being an offensive-minded head coach or Drew Petzing drawing up a perfect game plan, or the two of them coming together to form a game plan. But they were basically ready to commit suicide on offense by running the ball right at Micah Parsons yesterday. If you listen to what the in-game announcers were talking about, they were willing to run the ball right at Micah Parsons. So he's forced to deal with blocking up front. So he can't jump to holes. They were running it right at him, getting a blocker out right in his face. So he couldn't beat them to the spot. And by golly, it worked. To perfection. By golly. It worked. I don't know who to credit for that. But you watched that yesterday, and they were not scared of Micah Parsons in that defense. So all the credit in the world, James Conner. I'll just continue to, woohoo, pat myself on the back here for making him my flag plant of the year. 'Cause so far it's looking really good. And I will continue to be on my knees praying that he stays healthy the rest of the season. So 100% agree. James Conner has looked phenomenal to start the year. Anything you want to add on James Conner, Cameron?
I mean, he's averages 15 points last year. He averaged 16 points the year before. He's averaging 16 points right now. When he's healthy, he's a fringe to, surefire RB1. That's just the way he's been playing. And we've said all year, there's going to be ugly games where it's like that week 1 where he has 5 catches for 20 yards and puts up 7 PPR points. And that's just how it's going to work some games. And then he'll have other games like this where he looks great. And that's just what you get with James Conner.
And I'll take all of it. I just don't. I don't watch any Cardinals games, and I'm very okay with that. Let's take a quick break here from our friends over at Underdog Fantasy, and we'll be back with more takeaways. Today's podcast episode is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, we love Underdog. It is the easiest place to play best ball formats, and they even have their own form of player props called Pick'em. You can make up to 20 times your money on a single night by correlating props together. 2 picks will triple your money, 3 will 6 times it, 4 will 10 times it, and 5 plays that all hit will multiply your entry by 20. You can even place insurance on your picks too, so if only 4 of your 5 props hit, you still get 10 times your entry. And if you use our code FELLAS when signing up, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. Alrighty, we are back. I don't know why I tried singing there. I should not do that again ever in my lifetime. Let's keep moving here with some more takeaways from week 3. We've got 7 more to cover here in the next 20-25 minutes, fellas. Let's do it. Cam, your second biggest takeaway from week 3.
It's got to be old man Keenan Allen. I mean,
get that man a cane. He's so old.
This dude is ridiculous, and I just love it because all offseason we're told he's washed. He can't do it. 18 receptions, 20-plus targets, 200 yards. He's the second player ever to do that. Only Brandon, or I think since 2000 to do that. Only player is Brandon Marshall. He has top 5 upside rest of the season. He does, especially with Mike Will gone. He is going to be peppered with targets nonstop. If you watch that game at all, he was always open. It was one of those things where it's like, how is he open again? You know where the ball is going every single time, and he is always open, and he is being used all over the field. If you saw his chart going from what was that next gen stats, their charts where they put out, and you see Keenan Allen's, he is, across the middle, up the sides. He's being used on the outside in the slot. He's getting that CD treatment that we talked about that he could potentially get in. And what we saw from CD last year was top 5 with 156 targets, 107 receptions, 1,359 yards, and 9 touchdowns. I don't think he'll have the same yards per catch as CD did. I think he's going to be a little bit lower. But, he's just getting peppered with targets, and he's the wide receiver 1 right now. And he's had back-to-back 30-point weeks. There's really nothing more you could be asking for Keenan Allen.
It seemed like the absolute silliest argument. I don't want him because he's old. That's a dynasty argument. That's not a redraft argument. I will take guys who are in good offenses no matter how old they are until they show me signs that they're declining. Keenan Allen, before his injury, he showed me no signs of declining last year. When he came back at the end of the season, the wide receiver 3 overall, that is not a man who's showing me signs of decline. All we had seen from him was consistency, and Kellen Moore comes in and says, you know what? This guy is still good. He's still got something left in the tank. Let's use it. And oh my gosh, he absolutely tore up the Viking zone coverage. And that's what you can expect him to do. Yeah. If these defenses are going to continue playing zone coverage, Keenan Allen is going to feast on that. Keenan Allen feasts on zone coverage. All the great wide receivers in the NFL feast on zone coverage. And Keenan Allen is one of those players. So yeah, flag plant, league winner, all the above. He was all those things for us this year. And man, he's making us look real smart, real wise for being in on Keenan Allen this year. I don't want a victory lap or pat our backs too much, but it's just incredible how good he has been so far this year.
I do want to add, Austin Eckler has been out these last 2 games, so I think that does inflate his, reception total a little bit. But even with Austin Eckler these last couple of years in the game, Keenan Allen has still looked great when he was on the field. We talked about he was wide receiver 3 last year, over the last 7 weeks. So he's a guy that can do it. It's just I'm not expecting 20 targets again, every week moving forward.
And I think that's the thing we have to remember is that without Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen typically is better, right? They draw, the same over the middle, short yardage kind of targets. Granted, Keenan Allen, they've been pushing the ball downfield a little bit more with him in this offense, but that is also what we have seen throughout the course of their careers is that when Austin Eckler misses time, Keenan Allen performs better and vice versa. When Keenan Allen misses time, Austin Eckler better. Sure. Want to jump in? Any final thoughts?
This might be the most obvious statement of the century, but 33 years old is not the same as 31 years old. Adam Thielen, you had a reason to be out because 33 is a reason to be out based on age. Sure. 31 with a talent like Keenan Allen, you do not just decline at just an all-time rate.
Especially when you come back and show that you can still be elite. That's the thing that just baffles my mind, is that he came back and showed he was just fine. And people are like, nah, I'm good. I don't believe that. Even though he had showed us literally for the last 5 years that he was really good.
Yeah.
It just, I can't get over how silly that argument was to start the year. Ty, I'll kick to you. Your second biggest takeaway from week 3.
It's my man, Sam LaPorta. Okay. And Sam LaPorta through the first 2 weeks led all tight ends in yards per route run, the holy grail of future success metrics, all that kind of stuff. And I don't remember the stat line off the top of my head, but he had, 8 catches, 11 targets, 80 something yards and a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
right.
Nailed it. Look, he's emerged as the number 2 option in this offense. We thought it could be Josh Reynolds. Josh Reynolds is more than likely the wide receiver 2. That does not mean he's the number 2 option. And I think we still kind of have belief that Jahmyr Gibbs can also take that number 2 option role. But as of right now, it is Amon-Ra and Sam LaPorta. LaPorta's floor is pretty safe when we're talking tight ends and stuff, but he gives you boom weeks like this. So moving forward, I mean, what is he right now? The tight end 2 overall?
Mm-hmm.
You value him as a top 3, top 5 tight end. Like Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson. Sam LaPorta is right there.
Yeah, he's probably next. Yeah.
He's next. So look, Sam LaPorta, if you drafted him or picked him up on waivers, good on you, because you have found the latest big star tight end that is going to pay big dividends throughout the fantasy season.
It does make you feel a little silly. We should have seen this coming, right? They traded Hawkinson, and then pretty much with what they got for Hawkinson went out and drafted a tight end. So it makes sense that they would want to plug him back into where they were already using Hawkinson. And they're using him all over the field. He had a 40-yard touchdown this last game. So it's a lot of upside. And like you said, tight ends are so desolate right now anyways, that you got to start him the rest of the season, and you don't even touch it pretty much unless you've got like a Kelce or something like that.
I think some people, I want to backtrack to our statement of like the top 3 of Kelce, Andrews, Hawk, and then probably Sam LaPorta. I think some people might push back on that because Kittle did put up 16 this past week. Waller, high volume week. I don't think he did much with it. Yeah, only 5 fantasy points, but did have 13 in week 2. But the thing is like, though you had Brandon Ayuk, who was basically playing injured that entire game against the Giants. Darren Waller, that offense looks absolutely terrible. Sam LaPorta is a definition of consistency. And at this point, it's going to be matched up. George Kittle gets the Cardinals next week, so I'm probably going to fire up George Kittle against the Cardinals. But still, like Sam LaPorta, he's a weekly play for sure. He has to be in your starting lineup if you don't have one of the big 3, and you could honestly probably throw him in ahead of Kittle or Waller, depending on the matchup.
For sure.
Yeah, most definitely.
All right, I want to move on, and I want to talk about another player that impressed this week. Has impressed the first 2 weeks, and this is like, if we look at the definition of volume is king. I'm gonna pull up a dictionary real quick, and I'm pulling up the definition of volume is king, and I'm gonna show you what pops up on the screen. Zach Moss, baby.
I thought it was going to be Naji Harris.
Volume is not king with Naji Harris. Volume is non-existent with Naji Harris. Efficiency is what is the killer of Naji Harris. Zach Moss in a theoretically bad matchup. Now I know the Ravens had some players injured in this game. They actually had a good chunk of their defense injured, but Zach Moss, 30 rushing attempts for 122 yards. That man averaged 4 yards per carry against the Ravens front line. Caught 2 passes for 23 yards and a score as well. Impressive catch. Did you guys see that catch that he made? Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. That was beautiful. Zach Moss. Oh my goodness. I don't think, Ty, I know you said like Jonathan Taylor wants to come back and play football. I don't know if the Colts are going to let him. That's what I'm terrified, because Zach Moss has looked good in his first 2 weeks back. He has scored 20 fantasy points in each of his first 2 games. Now, I get it. Favorable matchup against the Houston Texans the week prior. But to do that to the Baltimore Ravens defense, difficult-ish schedule coming up, but Zach Moss, volume is king. I'm very impressed with Zach Moss. I am very intrigued by Zach Moss because he's the guy in that backfield. Deion Jackson's gone. Trey Sermon promoted from the practice squad, but didn't really turn in much of a relevant performance. This was a Zach Moss running back show. So going forward, how do you value Zach Moss? What are we supposed to do with Zach Moss? Do you sell high on Zach Moss? Because right now I'm like leaning towards until Jonathan Taylor comes back, I'm just going to ride this Zach Moss hot hand, but I don't know if the Colts are going to want to bring Jonathan Taylor back if Zach Moss is playing this well.
Yeah, I think he'll still have a role in the offense when he comes back. When Jonathan Taylor comes back, I don't think he's gonna be the workhorse or anything. I think Taylor's coming back. I will also be sending you a trade offer, Lucas, in about 45 minutes with Zach Moss in it, just so you're aware.
What league do you have Zach Moss in?
Our redraft league, and so
I'll decline it.
You want it?
Because I'm not going to give you Jamar Chase.
I don't want Jamar Chase. I just
shut up. That's exactly what you've been trying to mooch Jamar Chase off of me for Derrick Henry, and I've been saying no.
He's so good. But no, in all seriousness, I view him as a handcuff who's got his starter coming back on week 5. That's the way I look. That's the way I look at Zach Moss.
Handcuff.
Yeah,
he is. And we've seen
not
it
right
before.
now.
Well, not right. He's got one more week. Jonathan Taylor's
I'm
already.
gonna milk all I can out of Zach Moss.
He's for sure. Right for sure. I mean, I'm gonna try and trade him like I said, in 45 minutes. I'm gonna be sending out as much offers as I can with him and Raheem Mostert and Derrick Henry in them. That's what I'm gonna be doing for the next 4 hours tonight. But that is the way I view him once week 5 hits.
Did we do a Derrick Henry, Zach Moss name game?
I did.
Yes, we did.
And I still said Derrick Henry because I am scared about that element for Zach Moss of Jonathan Taylor coming back. But I seriously question if the Colts are going to be like, no, you know what? We're good. We have Zach Moss. He's been performing really well.
It's been unreal through his 2 games so far. That I think the thing with Indianapolis just in general, it's them in Arizona. They are way better than people expected them to be. And it may not be a winning record by the end of the season, but they're going to be fantasy relevant. Yeah. And you should buy in on it, I guess. I'm not saying go buy Zach Moss because I think a lot of people are going to be trying to sell high, especially with the JT element and stuff. But sorry. No, buy in on the Zach Moss hype because it may not be here much longer, but if it is, it's probably a league winner. Can we say that?
If Zach Moss plays the rest of the season, there's 100%. Potential opportunity for that. If Zach Moss plays the rest of the season, yes, there is league winning upside. It will all depend on if Jonathan Taylor's in Indianapolis Colt come week 5.
I mean, at this point, I will say the Colts are stupid if they don't trade Taylor. Like if they don't find a trade partner for Taylor after week 5, by week 6, then they're just crazy because they've already said they're not going to re-sign him. He's going to play out this year. They're not, going to go run the table and win the Super Bowl. So why would you not trade him, especially if Zach Moss is already playing well?
Yeah, as long as Jonathan Taylor is not on the football field, I am all in on Zach Moss.
For sure.
I can't believe I'm saying that. That was not on my bingo card for the 2023 season of Zach Moss, potential league winner if Jonathan Taylor doesn't play. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much I sneaky like Zach Moss right now. Let's move on before I say something I regret about Zach Moss. I'm getting to that point. I'm starting to learn.
Hot and bothered.
Let's keep it going. Last round of takeaways here, Cameron. I guess technically you're second to last because you're going to take our 10th one this week. But your third biggest takeaway from week 3.
Justin Fields has been playing very bad. He is the quarterback 16 so far, although he is playing better than he has more fantasy points than Trevor Lawrence and Dak Prescott. I will just throw that out there. They are also playing bad.
Disgusting.
But we're talking about
so
Justin
disgusting.
Fields. He is averaging 175 passing yards a game, 1.33 touchdowns a game, and 1.66 turnovers a game, with only 36 rushing yards and a 58% completion percentage.
He only has 36 rushing yards on the year.
36 rushing yards a game. He has 100 rushing.
I was going to say, I'm like, oh my God.
But I think I
was about to have a heart attack.
But I think he had like 80% of those rushing yards in one game. I do think from a fantasy perspective, he's going to improve, right? He is right now at his floor. Like he cannot play worse. There is nothing about Justin Fields that can be worse than what he's doing right now. And yet he's still the quarterback 16. It does scare me a little bit. Last week, he had 99 passing yards against the Chiefs, and he just could not do anything on the field. The Chiefs did whatever they wanted. Chad Henne was playing early in the fourth. He might have been playing in the third.
Blaine Gabbert.
Blaine Gabbert.
Blaine Gabbert. Yeah.
Yep, same thing. And the bigger thing for me on this is it is hurting DJ Moore and relegating him to a big play guy, which is exactly what we saw in Carolina, right? I think he can still be a top 24 option, at the end of the year if he stays healthy, but you're not exactly happy about it. I did just trade for DJ Moore about, 7 minutes ago in our Dynasty League. So I am kind of buying in on Justin Fields coming back a little bit, but at the same time, I do think that there is going to be a lot of bumps in the road for the rest of these Chicago guys. Running backs, I think Roschon looks like he's going to be the guy. But if Justin Fields doesn't get it going, it doesn't matter who the running back is because it's going to be ugly no matter what. And Cole Kmet, I fear, is going to feel a lot like he did last year, where he'll have good weeks, but then he'll have weeks where he's just not good because the Bears' offense is not good.
I can't even diagnose what it is. That's the problem. Because I think it has a lot to do with coaching. I also think it has a lot to do with Justin Fields and just not being able to put it together, despite this being the third year as a team starter. I don't know what it is. There's a lot to diagnose here. There's a lot that needs to change. The Bears, like Ryan Poles came in and they're like, yeah, we're heading in the right direction. And now it's like, oh my gosh, like Matt Eberflus might be on the hot seat. Luke Getsy, oh my gosh, he's definitely on the hot seat. Lost already defensive coordinator earlier this week. That's a whole scandal and a half. The Bears are just a mess, and clearly it's shown up on the football field. Everything behind the scenes is getting onto the football field, and it's devastatingly impacting Justin Fields. This was a guy you took, mid fourth round in your fantasy drafts this year, and if you were on the turn and you really wanted to make sure you got an elite quarterback, early fourth round. I was a victim of taking Justin Fields in the early fourth round. I was sitting at the 1-2 turn, and it gets to me at the 3-4 turn. And I'm like, with how my league is drafting quarterbacks right now, I'm going to end up with Matthew Stafford as my starting quarterback, who probably would be a better option than Justin Fields this year right now. I digress, but this is a guy you spent valuable capital on, and he can't even give you, 16 fantasy points in a given week. It's just been really bad. It's been really, really, really tough and ugly sledding, frankly, for Justin Fields.
Yeah,
go. Yep.
I would just say I would still try and target Justin Fields with certain quarterbacks. I'm not going to send Tua for Justin Fields right now. No. I'm not going to send Kirk for Justin Fields right now, just with the way they've been playing and knowing what the floor is. But if you got like Russell Wilson right now as quarterback 8, averaging 19 fantasy points a game. If you could somehow trade Russell Wilson, in a small plus for Justin Fields, I'm looking at other guys. Jared Goff, I think I would trade him for Justin Fields. Mac Jones, obviously some of these guys you might have to add a little.
You have to sprinkle. You have name value, yeah.
But if you got these guys who are overperforming right now, I would go trade him for Justin Fields. But I'm not trading like a Lamar Jackson, a Josh Allen. I'm not going to try and trade down from Justin Fields to take the shot of he could be this, because he definitely could, and he could win that trade. But I feel like there's a lot bigger percentage chance right now that you lose that trade in pretty horrific fashion.
Couldn't agree more. Ty, I'll kick it over to you for your final takeaway from week 3.
Let's talk about Saints players real quick. And I know we have tried to just keep it to 1 or 2 players. But when Derek Carr leaves the game and is now week to week with a sprained AC joint, and I'm pretty sure it's his throwing shoulder, it severely impacts all of the weapons on the Saints, because Jameis Winston is now the guy, at least, for next week, probably the week after, because Dennis Allen came out and was like, yeah, Derek Carr is week to week. I don't know how you're week to week with an AC joint sprain in your throwing shoulder, but I'm not a doctor, so I don't know. But let's take a look at last year when Jameis Winston was the starting quarterback for the Saints before Andy Dalton took over. 3 games. Alvin Kamara, he was the running back 55 in 2 games. He had 1 game with 7 targets, and he only caught 2 of those. He did average 4.2 yards per carry, so the rushing wasn't the worst, but running back 55 in 2 games was not good. Juwan Johnson, this was before he started breaking out last year with his touchdowns. He had 1 game with 7 targets, but there was not a whole lot happening. There has not been a whole lot that has happened this year with Juwan Johnson. Chris Olave, he had 2 games with 13 targets. He had a wide receiver 6 finish, so that's a great sign to see. Michael Thomas, though, is the biggest takeaway. MT got hurt in week 3, but through the first 2 weeks, he was the wide receiver 9. He was seeing 8-9 targets a game. He found the end zone at least once in both of those games. Jameis trusts Michael Thomas a ton. If there is a Saints player that you should go invest in right now, I know Alvin Kamara is coming back now, but I'd argue it's Michael Thomas. These ceilings are impacted by Derek Carr not being in, which is kind of crazy to say because they weren't really scoring touchdowns a whole lot with Derek Carr. But in terms of just volume, Olave and MT are still going to get theirs. It's kind of a question mark as to what we're going to get from Alvin Kamara, though, now that he's coming back. So just a message to those that have Chris Olave and Michael Thomas. You don't really have that much to worry about. If you are an Alvin Kamara manager and you have been waiting for him to come back, probably need to see a week. But if it isn't good, you may have to pivot.
For sure. You know who the wide receiver 11 is in targets right now, right?
Michael Thomas.
Michael Thomas. He's got 26
Rashid Shaheed.
Michael Thomas has 26 targets on the year. He's got an 8, 8, and 9 so far. So he is, or 8, 9, and 9. Sorry, excuse me. So he is involved in this offense. It's clear. Sorry about that. Clear that his pace is, or his, where he's catching the ball is very different than Chris Olave. Chris Olave is the downfield threat. Michael Thomas is only averaging 9 yards per catch. But like you said, he is involved, and Jameis has shown last year that he's willing to throw the ball to Michael Thomas. So that should be something very interesting moving forward.
I'll keep it on the wide receiver topic for my last takeaway. There's a lot of things I could talk about here. We could talk about Devontae Adams. My gosh, what a week, right? Like he's officially back. We don't have to be too freaked out by Jimmy Garoppolo anymore. We could also talk about the fact that Latavius Murray was the running back 24 this week. And you want to take a crack at how many fantasy points he scored this week? 9.1. He was a top 24 running back. It was a dramatic fall off. Like you look at, here we go. We have Devon A-Chain at 51 fantasy points. He's the running back 1. Raheem Mostert at 45. Ken Walker at 30. We take a dip from 30 to 23 to Christian McCaffrey. Zach Moss, James Conner, who's at 19.6, Jerome Ford, Travis Etienne, Jerick McKinnon, Alexander Madison, Miles Sanders, and then we're down to 15.8 with Isaiah Pacheco at running back 12. And then it just gets more ugly and ugly as we go down the list. But the takeaway that I want to talk about Tank Dell, wide receiver for the Houston Texans. I want to talk about this man who was drafted. Correct me if I'm wrong. Was he drafted in the 4th round of the NFL draft this past year?
4th round.
He was I nailed it. 4th round pick in the NFL draft this year. Wanted by CJ Stroud. Said, hey, go out and get that guy for me. So the reports say. Yes.
I stand corrected.
Is he a 5th round pick?
He was a 3rd round pick.
He was a 3rd round pick.
Wow. I knew it. Gosh.
All right. Well, Tank Dell, 3rd round pick. Clearly, my gosh, he's paying dividends now. He has scored 20 plus fantasy points in the last 2 weeks. He put up 20 in week 2 against the Colts, 25.5 against the Jaguars in week 3. Nico Collins had been the big talk of this team, but Tank Dell is slowly starting to become that guy in this offense. But the problem is his snaps are all over the place. 48% in week 1. That was because Noah Brown was still in the lineup. Now he's on IR. Got 79% of the snaps in week 2. But then he was down to 61 last week. So I don't know what to make of this. Nico Collins did have a down week after showing out the first 2 weeks. But maybe the most important takeaway from all this is that CJ Stroud, he's looked a lot better than advertised. I will tell you that right now. There's concerns about him coming in. Everybody's like, oh, Ohio State quarterback. What was the IQ test? Now I can't even remember. A-score? Is that what it was called?
Oh,
The one where he was like the lowest by like
yeah.
20,000 points. That's not actually true.
Was
but
it the Q2 test or something?
That's what it was. It was something along those lines. It's not important that we figured that out right now, but
S2.
S2. Thank you.
S2.
There it is. S2.
Booyah.
Got there eventually. S2, right? Oh my gosh, his S2 score is just abysmal, but he's coming and showing out so far this year. And clearly Nico Collins, Tank Dell are reaping the benefits of that. Like, I think Tank Dell is like we said about Zay Flowers right away. This dude's a weekly flex consideration now. And frankly, if he's in a good matchup where the Texans are going to keep hucking the ball around, yeah, he probably could find your lineup as a flex option. And depending on how thin you are at wide receiver, could even be a wide receiver too, which is just crazy that we're talking about that from a third round rookie this early in the season.
Yeah, I would agree. He's CJ Stroud. He's averaging 40 attempts a game. He's averaging 300 passing yards a game. He's fourth in yards. He's fourth in attempts. I mean, this is a team that has just shown already, hey, we're going to let our rookie just huck the ball around and figure it out on the fly. And he's been doing pretty well with it. So if that's the game plan they're going to go by, then yeah, I want in on those wide receivers. So I think you're right on with that.
I think the one thing we have to be aware of when it comes to these Texans wide receivers is that their touchdown upside is pretty limited.
That's fair.
I put Tank Dell in our most recent waiver wire video, and I said, if he's still available, you need to go at him and probably stash him because you're probably not going to force him into your lineup. But as we get closer and closer to bye week season and stuff, Tank Dell has the possibility of putting up 20 fantasy points just based on volume. And if I should say it like this, he can give you 15 with volume and he can give you 20 with a score, right? That's what you want to look for as a bye week replacement. And Tank Dell, Nico Collins are the two guys that you want in this Texans offense. This week it was Tank Dell. Weeks past it's been Nico Collins. That's just how it's going to be, but both are going to get volume to stay relevant this year in fantasy.
I mean, can I push back on that touchdown opportunity comment a little bit? I mean, Texans 25 fantasy, I take that back. I was looking at the wrong box score. I don't disagree. I was looking at. I'm like, wait a second. They put up 25 on Baltimore, but that was the Ravens score indeed. So I take that back. I think you're right. I think these touchdowns probably will get sprinkled around, but I mean, if we do get a 37-17 performance, like there's room for Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Robert Woods, all to find the end zone, right? So I think if they're in a game, if they're having to throw to keep up, like even if you look at the Colts, 20-31, like even if they score 3 touchdowns in a game, there's opportunity there for Tank Dell, which I think is exciting. I think we have to buy into that a little bit because he has to get on the field more after that performance. He just has to. It'd be silly not to. So yeah, I am surprisingly in on Nico Collins and Tank Dell. And you know what? CJ Stroud, man, he has looked pretty dang good. I am very impressed thus far. Cameron, take us home here for our last takeaway. And I think this is a brilliant last takeaway to end on.
Naji Harris should not be on your roster anymore. I'm not saying you should cut him, but you need to trade him now. And I know it's pennies on the dollar, but it's only going to get worse. He has not played over 60% of snaps yet. Jalen Warren is out targeting him 16-6. Naji Harris currently has 3 receptions for 2 yards. This is a guy, we said it, before week 2. Lucas said, is he a sit? I agreed with him because we're talking, he's a guy who relies on volume. Right now, he has his career high yards per carry, and it's 4. That is his career high on a season so far through these first 3 weeks, and it's 4. He just had 20 touches last week and finished with 6.5 fantasy points, which was his highest on the season. Like there is just no upside here for Naji. He's not going to get the receptions he needs on this offense. He's not going to be scoring multiple touchdowns in a game. That's definitely not going to happen. And Jalen Warren has continued to look better than Naji has, and reports come out every single week. I don't know if you guys feel like this, but every single week before the games, Jalen Warren expected to get more touches this game. Yes. Jalen Warren expected to be in a bigger role, and it just keeps coming in. And before you know it, Naji's going to maybe be seeing 40% of the snaps with no receiving role, and he is going to be absolutely useless. So you got to try to trade him now with any name value that he's got left.
Here's a question that I've got. I know that Pittsburgh just beat Vegas. They beat Cleveland, so they're 2-1. But let's say worst comes to worst. The Steelers go on like a 5-game losing streak, and they're only averaging like 15 points a game. Matt Canada gets fired. Is there all of a sudden more value on Naji Harris if Matt Canada leaves?
No, because I think there's a talent issue with Naji Harris too. I'm going to break the silence on that. I think there is a talent issue with Naji Harris. Not that he is an abysmal, terrible running back, but like, I don't know. Like this is Ty, you pointed this out very, very early this offseason. This just has Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard written all over it. Like eventually Zeke just isn't going to have the same burst. He just didn't have the same talent. He didn't have the same burst to hit the holes, right? Like Jaylen Warren, he is clearly looking like the more fresh guy out there. And is that not exactly what we saw in Dallas? And Zeke just slowly started to lose value. But Naji Harris is not the same football player Zeke is. Like he's not even putting up top 12 numbers. And he's already losing work and losing his job. This feels like an accelerated, Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard situation. So no, like even if Matt Canada gets fired, no, I still want nothing to do with Naji because I would rather be out on Naji this very moment than if say Matt Canada does get fired. Like even if in that hypothetical, I would much rather just remain out on Naji Harris now than know Matt Canada is going to get fired in the future and hold on to hope for Naji Harris.
Yeah. And
I would just much rather stake my claim right now on that because I also just think Naji Harris is just the vision, the burst. It's just not there. And that's just not something that changes with an offensive coordinator.
Yeah. I mean, even his rookie year, his second year, he was never been known as a guy who's going to hit the hole and explode. He has never been a guy who's going to break away runs. He has been, his first year, the only reason he was extremely relevant was because of volume. He averaged like 3.7 yards per carry. And then he did the same thing last year. He's not like where Zeke was, where that you're like, oh, maybe he can find it again. He's just never had it to that extent.
Right.
And when you got a guy like Jaylen Warren, who they've watched for a whole year, and now we're seeing again, hey, when we put this guy in the game, he actually makes things happen. They're going to start leaning into Jaylen Warren. And I think even if they start winning more games, I think they're going to lean into Jaylen Warren more and more as the season goes on.
So yeah, I Naji Harris, I agree. You go sell him for 50 cents on the dollar right now. I think you have to, because he's not worth throwing into your lineups right now. He's a sick candidate literally every single week at this point. All right, how do we want to wrap up the episode, fellas? Anything we want to add before we sign off?
Get rid of Naji.
We can end on that. Get rid of Naji. I'm good with it.
The Falcons are still infuriating.
The 2-1 Falcons.
2-1 Falcons. I mean, let's be honest. You should probably move on from both Drake London and Kyle Pitts as well. Speaking of players to move on from,
they should just move on from Desmond Ridder and Arthur Smith. But that's a different conversation.
That's a very different conversation.
Perfect way to wrap it up.
We'll wrap it out there. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. Hey, if you're not subscribed to the podcast already, make sure you do that. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. Make sure you're subscribed. And if you wouldn't mind leaving us a nice little review as well, we would greatly appreciate that. Helps push us up the rankings. Actually means a lot more to us as well that we know you're listening to the show and want to support us. So we thank you for that. If you're watching on YouTube, hey there, make sure you subscribe, turn on the notifications so you can be alerted when all of our daily videos are up, whether it's a podcast, a YouTube video. Some days we're posting 2 shorts a day. You're getting anywhere from 2 to 3 videos guaranteed every single day. You're even getting us live on kickoff on Sundays. So make sure to turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when we're going live, when all of our new episodes are up. We thank you for your support over there as well. And we're FF Fellas on Twitter. You can follow us there. I'm at Lucas Wenzel on Twitter, on the X, Camlaw FFF Cameron, Tyler _Plath, DFF Fellas on Twitter, Fantasy Football Fellas on TikTok and Facebook as well. Thanks for tuning into this episode. We will see you all later this week to preview the best and worst matchups for week 4. I almost said week 3. Week 4 of the fantasy football season. We will see you all then. Deuces.